Today we've got representatives from Newson Health, Balance app, and the Oglesbys, Chris Oglesby is the CEO of Bruntwood and Jane is his wife, talking about the menopause, its effects in the workplace and in life, and how the Balance app can help women manage and track their perimenopause and menopause journey, and very crucially kind of demystifying around HRT and what effects it has on women.
In part of my GP training, we get a really small amount of menopause training, and I see a lot of people in practice and part of my health assessments in gyms that are really frustrated about their symptoms and maybe not knowing how to go about the diagnosis. So essentially just to upskill myself to get a bit more information so I can recognize people who are having symptoms and where to signpost them for help.
I thought I knew everything about menopause, and I didn't. I thought perimenopause was just maybe a couple of headaches or anything, and I've learned that it actually can probably in some cases be worse.
So many people that I've spoken to have said, you know, I've just gone and got the app, or I'm going to get it as soon as I'm back home, talking about the effects, how to have those conversations with their HR departments, their partners, their loved ones, their families, all sorts of different conversations that people now feel enabled and excited and educated to have, which is the whole point of today and the conversations that we were having.
Okay, good afternoon everyone and welcome. We're thrilled to be able to welcome you here today in person to our award-winning Pioneer Building Block for our Menopause in the Workplace event in conversation with Bruntwood and Balance. 47 million people reach the menopause globally every single year, and yet conversation around menopause and perimenopause health in the workplace is severely lacking. We wanted to host an event today that was inclusive for everybody, for those of us who are looking to have a better understanding of how they can support people they know going through perimenopause and menopause, and those who are looking to offer and implement better support in the workplace, and for those of us who are experiencing perimenopause and menopause. In the lead up to the event, I had some great conversations with customers, with colleagues, with family and friends about why these conversations are so important. Not surprisingly, amongst a lot of understanding and support, I discovered a few opinions that did keep coming up. Some of them are, thanks, but our workforce is predominantly under the age of 30, we're okay. Or, thank goodness, I don't want to talk about that yet, I've got years left, thank you very much. Or, I don't understand actually how that would impact people in the workplace. I'll let you ruminate on these just for 1 minute. Going back 4 years ago, we hosted a menopause cafe event in our building Neo around the corner. I was lucky enough to be able to host the event on the night and privileged to listen to many amazing people talk through their experiences, through their diagnosis, through their symptoms, and how the menopause had affected them personally and professionally. I don't need to tell you that this was an eye-opening couple of hours for me. I left overwhelmed by this new information, and I also felt like I'd been cheated out of some information growing up. I felt guilty for all of those times that I'd made fun of my mum and my auntie with their hot flushes and their sieve-like memories. But most importantly, I left feeling inspired by these people and the difficult journeys that they've been on. Fast forward 2 years, and thanks to that event and the awareness it created, I became aware of subtle changes to my body and to my cycles. After over 2 years of an uphill battle with my GP in March, I was told that I'd begun my perimenopause journey. I'm 36 years old, or I'm 1 in 100. Not actually that uncommon. Now, that event was a great example of just how important these conversations are in creating awareness and mutual understanding of the journey that 51% of the UK population will go on. Please join me in welcoming our stellar panel today. Thanks. Now, I'm going to do you a disservice if I try and introduce you all, so I'm going to hand over to you all. If you could all introduce yourselves and tell us why being here today is so important for you all personally. Chris?
From left to right?
Yes,
okay,
go for it.
So hi, I'm Chris Oglesby. I'm Group Chief Exec of Bruntwood, the people that have developed this building, and Emma's ultimate boss. So I guess, but I think the two of us are about as nervous as each other on this, because this is a bit of a different gig to my usual one. Yeah, why is this so important? Well, we'll come on to that in a bit more detail. But just to say, I'm here really as an employer of a lot of people, as a husband of. Oh, see, I knew this was going to get me as a wonderful woman. I'm hopeless. As a father, as a brother, but also as somebody whose purpose is really through our business to create thriving cities. And when I look at the challenges that we face in our cities, this is one of the big ones that's going to unlock the potential of the population of our cities in terms of driving them forward. So, number of hats.
Thanks, Chris. Jane?
Well, hi everybody. Yes, so I am the lovely wife, and I was a GP many years ago, and then I got into all sorts of other things. I had children, I've got a farm, I had a super busy life, and then in my early 40s, things started to crumble, and I wasn't holding it together very well at all. I started to back out of all the things that Chris and I could do together, and that our lives could offer to us. And thankfully, I was at medical school with Dr. Louise Newson, who works very closely with Rebecca, and some of you may have heard of. She's really pushed the boundaries now, and people talking about the menopause. So I got in touch with Louise, and I said, well, obviously, I don't want to take HRT. And she said, why don't you want to take HRT? We're just going to be replacing your hormones. Try it for a couple of months. If you don't feel any different, you can just stop. And of course, within 2 months, I felt like the person I used to be. And Chris went on that journey with me, and we'll talk more openly about that. And we're happy to take any questions at all. And as a result of that, we worked with Rebecca and Louise to start the Balanced Menopause app, because I realised that if I didn't know about it, with the job that I had had and the amount of reading I do, then there must be more women like me that just didn't know that that was what was happening to them. And we've got this lovely team at Balance now, so Gail can introduce you.
Hi everyone, well, we've got a full house today, and thank you for sharing both your stories. I think it takes lots of courage actually to be the first one to come and just break that taboo and talk about the M word in the workplace, so really important. My name is Gail Lalahi, I'm the Chief Operating Officer of the Free Balance app. And we are the biggest menopause app in the world. We are available in 150 different countries. And what has come up recently is that we are actually starting to help many organizations kind of with their menopause journey to make sure that they retain their talents as they should be. It's very important for me actually to go on to this mission. I think as they both said, Emma and Jane, it's actually very difficult for women to actually diagnose either through their GP or themselves. There are so many symptoms, and Rebecca is going to come on to that. But we know that although 25% of women kind of suffer very severe symptoms, 77% do not realize that it's related to their menopause, and therefore companies are hemorrhaging talent because their women are missing work. They are not being diagnosed there. And we're going to come on to some stats a bit later on, and this is driving me mad. Before I come into Balance, I was a marketing director in a big consumer electronic company, and I didn't have any role models. I was the only woman on the board, and suddenly when I met this lovely team, I thought, oh my God, this is why our company going to look at why there's a lack of diversity, especially in senior positions. And I thought we had something different that we could do, and I'm delighted to have a full house today, and we're going to talk about how we're going to, what solution might we come up together to support more women in the workplace. And I'd like to introduce you to the lovely Rebecca here.
Hello, everyone, and it's lovely to be here, and it's really wonderful to see so many people wanting to listen about the menopause and the menopause in the workplace, because it is huge. So as Jane says, I'm Rebecca Lewis. I'm a GP and menopause specialist, and I'm a director as well of the Free Balance app, and have sort of dedicated my life to the menopause world for the last few years. And it has been the most rewarding medicine I have ever done, to see women blossom when they get the right treatment and the right advice. And it is horrifying how many women are unaware of how severe the symptoms can be, how devastating they can be, how it can rob them of their relationship, their career, in some cases, you know, many, many things. And women can be cut off at the knees by this very normal, everyday condition, which we haven't understood properly. And now, thanks to Louise Newson, who really has been a pioneer here, in educating women, giving women, empowering women with evidence-based information that we have on the Balance app, to make their decisions about how they would like to manage their menopause so that they can reach their full potential and not be frightened and devastated by some symptoms in some people. So really delighted to be here and talk further in time about menopause.
Thanks, everyone, and I'm sure you're as excited as I am to get into the juicy conversation. I'm going to let you know it's definitely going to run over. So we want as many questions as possible at the end. But please, I know that we're filming, but please don't feel awkward at all if you need to get up and leave at any point. But yeah, we're just giving you the heads up that it's going to run over a little bit. Rebecca, 14 million days a year in the UK are lost, work days are lost to the menopause. What is the menopause? For those of us who don't know.
Well, it's a good place to start, isn't it? Yeah. So what is the menopause? Well, it really means the cessation of periods, when your periods stop. It's a year after your last natural period, which here in Europe and UK is about the age of 51, but 45 to 55 is average. However, 1 in 100, and it's probably more than that, will go through the menopause, like you bravely said, Emma, under the age of 40, and 1 in 1,000 will be under the age of 30. Our youngest patient where we work is 14. Many people will go through this as a natural and a normal process, but it may be a surgical menopause. Women may have to have their ovaries removed for lots of different medical reasons, or it could be as a side effect of treatments for cancer treatments. Chemotherapy, radiotherapy can damage the ovary and put a woman into menopause. Now, the time before your periods stop, you don't just wake up one day and your periods have stopped and then you're menopausal. The ovary generally begins to decline before it actually stops working. And that period of decline is called the perimenopause, and that can precede the menopause by 10 years. So if you think about it, if the average age is 51 of your last period, the perimenopause, meaning the ovary is not working properly, can be at 41. So women in their 40s in general will either be postmenopausal or perimenopausal. And during the perimenopause, this can be a very stormy time for women because they will be having periods. They may have changed slightly, become closer together or further apart, slightly heavier, slightly lighter, any of these symptoms. And the ovary is not as important for us women in producing 3 hormones: estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. And of course, when it's not functioning properly, it fails, and ovulating every month, it fails to produce these 3 hormones. And the problem is we have estrogen receptors and testosterone receptors all over the body. There's not a cell that I know of that doesn't have an estrogen receptor. So when the production of estrogen falls, it gives symptoms. It gives rise to multiple symptoms all over the body. And they will differ from person to person. So a woman's menopause is as individual as they are. So we cannot compare with our friends how they've been, for example. So everyone knows about hot flushes and night sweats. But did you also know that 20% of women will never experience those, but they'll have every other symptom in the book? And the main problem really women have actually is the effects on the brain with losing estrogen or having unreliable, fluctuating estrogen levels. The limbic system is really important for our mood and concentration and memory. And without estrogen, women become more anxious, lower in mood, sleep goes out of the window, often waking up 2, 3, 4 times a night. Concentration, can't focus. feeling overwhelmed by everyday tasks that they used to cope with no problem at all. These sort of symptoms really can floor women and lead to the problem of women going part-time, giving up their jobs, not going for career progression. So really, that in a nutshell is what the perimenopause and the menopause is. And we know that 25% of women have very severe symptoms. 80% will have symptoms and 25% will be very severe.
It's astonishing, and I know the next question is, it's kind of obvious, but can you talk us through how that does then affect people in the workplace?
I think really the three main top symptoms that can floor women in the workplace are absolute fatigue, poor concentration, this awful brain fog, really finding it difficult to stay on task. If someone's interrupted, they've lost it, they've forgotten it, whereas before they used to multitask with no problem. And anxiety. I have not actually met a menopausal woman who hasn't had a degree of an increase in anxiety. It might not be horrendous, and then there are others, the anxiety can be so bad they become almost housebound. They don't want to go out and socialise with their friends, and overthinking, catastrophizing is a really common symptom. So anxiety, double-checking what you've been doing, not trusting yourself, going back to check a piece of work, whereas normally you just give it in, that will be fine. And this double-checking and loss of confidence is absolutely devastating in the workplace and very difficult to talk about. Perhaps they feel people don't understand, or the line manager, wouldn't understand anything about this.
Thanks, Rebecca. Thank you. And Gail, so why is it important for businesses to talk about and more importantly, support colleagues with menopause?
Well, it's absolutely vital, every day that nothing is done, you're having, colleagues, line managers, bosses, employees that report to you who are coming to work with this symptom. They haven't slept properly, they have anxiety, etc. And we know with our not-for-profit research on education, we've done a survey that has actually been presented at the Royal College of GP conference over 4,000 women, actually 3,800 women. And we found that 12% of women have resigned because of their menopausal symptom. 12%, they're just gone. And the problem we have is that actually HR's team don't necessarily realize that they have a problem with the menopause. We know that most of the women who've had, a sickness certificate issued for the menopausal symptom actually didn't say menopause on the sickness certificate, it said anxiety. So it's very, very difficult for company to realize that there is an issue with the menopause when there's nothing that to flag it. And we also know that 18% of women reduced their hours, not because they just wanted a better work-life balance, because again, they didn't feel they could cope with it. So how are they supposed to, to progress in their career, the career they've worked so hard to achieve? And I think the one that just drives me mad the most is 21% of women just give up. They resign. I was talking to a Center Park lady the other day. She used to be a manager at Center Parks, and she just couldn't do it anymore. So she resigned, and then she thought, God, I kind of need the money. So she came back as a cleaning lady. Not because she was crap at her job, because she didn't get the diagnostic. She lost all confidence. So it's so important for companies to really, really nurture, look after your female talents in a way that is kind of empowering them with the right evidence-based information, so they have the choice, so they can diagnose themselves. And of course, the Free Balance app is a fantastic tool, to support your employees. And we're going to talk about other solutions in a minute too.
Yeah, don't worry, we're not going to carry on the conversation of we will get to what we can do. So Jane, you are amazing and refreshingly open about your journey, which is incredible for people around you. I want to talk a bit more about what was your symptom and diagnosis journey like, and what recommendations would you make for someone starting to experience symptoms, or what recommendations would you make to the people around that person who are starting to notice symptoms in their loved ones?
Yeah, well, I think the most important thing for me to say is that it's with my retrospective, it's going back looking at myself in the previous 14 years that I would say I can now identify the symptoms. It was so gradual, And so much, we went along, you know, we had a property business, there was a financial crash, property business plummeted in value, we had a large mortgage, we had 3 small children, and you start to think that it's all due to those life circumstances, and then my father was dying, and, you know, all sorts of things create that perfect storm. I didn't have particularly only if I'd had alcohol I would have night sweats. I wasn't one of those stripping the bed covers off or anything, was I? It was all very gradual, but I was really, really anxious. I was one of those people that I know Rebecca and Louise see all the time. I'd sort of stopped having to wash my hair quite as often as I used to. My nails didn't grow quite as well as they used to. I was a bit itchy, but that was all right. I went off to the natural remedy shop and I bought pills, and then I bought more pills and more pills, and then I forgot to take them all and they sat in the cupboard, and then I worried about the side effects of taking the supplements, and of course I was going for that bravery award that you get by going through the menopause without any help, that one we all know about, you know. And I was very fortunate that a good friend of mine is a lot more sort of black and white about things, and she had said, well, I'm menopausal, and she'd went off and she'd found Louise. And I think the biggest battle I had and still have is some kind of level of guilt and worry about the fact that I am replacing my own hormones with hormones. And this is a deeply ingrained thing in women, that we're sort of been told that it's a very, that even the word natural, you know, I'm sure Rebecca will tell you that back in Victorian times, the average age of the menopause was 57, but women only lived until they were about 59. So the menopause is a relatively new...
Modern phenomenon.
It's a modern phenomenon because we're living so much longer that we're now living a third of our lives with much less estrogen than our body expects. And I think, you know, it affected our relationship, my relationship with my children, my relationship with my husband, our intimacy, my energy levels. I mean, 3 to 4 times a night would be bliss. I was awake every 20 minutes, only for a couple of minutes, and I'd nod off to sleep. So by the time we got up in the morning and I got to get 3 kids ready for school, I was already exhausted. And I think that those subtle, well, they're not so subtle, are they? But those less talked about symptoms are far more impactful on your self-esteem. And, you know, I'd been a GP, I'd got a regenerative beef farm, I was a trustee of the Oglesby Charitable Trust, and I just thought I was going to have to stop doing all these things. I'd sit in a meeting, I know your sister wouldn't mind me sharing with you, she went to a meeting, turned up, and asked why they were having the meeting, and was told that she'd called it. You know, and it's that extreme memory loss, and I still have some of those bits and pieces. I don't think I'll ever be back to where I was in my 30s. I still have word-finding problems. I still do forget to go to meetings. I still do turn up late. But now I'm kinder to myself. When I was without the hormone replacement, every time I got something wrong, it just made me feel worse about myself. So. Yeah. I don't know, is that
it's brilliant.
A reasonable summary?
Yeah, it was brilliant. How was your diagnosis journey? Was that quite straightforward for you?
It was once I saw Louise.
Yeah.
Of course, prior to that, I hadn't spoken to anybody professional about it at all because I thought I knew. You know, so, I mean, I knew I'd got anxiety. I'd spent loads of money on therapy. I'd been diagnosed with a generalised anxiety disorder. There is very little evidence of anxiety in me now. It'll still creep in when I'm at my lowest, but I'm not sure that was ever really the major problem. You know, I don't think I did have a mental health issue. I think I had a low estrogen issue. And as soon as I saw Louise, she just has a very matter-of-fact way. She said, we're not giving you anything that your body isn't expecting. Yeah. We're giving you the identical hormone to the one your body produces. So I have topical estrogen. I don't know if you'll go through the types, but I wear it on my skin, so I've got no increased clotting risk. We do have a family history of breast cancer. I had been unnecessarily worried about that. Louise spoke to me, and when I actually looked at the stats and the evidence, you know, delete, not a problem. cardiovascular disease runs in the family. I'm protected now because I take estrogen. So once Louise had sort of laid it all out for me and said, Jane, these are the facts. The rest of it actually is a lot of misinformation and myth and worry. The facts are these. And everything we do on the Balance app is evidence-based. Everything they prescribe is available on the NHS, that they prescribe at the private clinic, which they were forced to start because they weren't able to get funding as menopause specialists on the NHS because they're closing menopause clinics on the NHS.
And it's just vital, isn't it, to get away from the misinformation and to get the facts that you need. Chris, I'm really excited to get into the conversation with you. You can tell me, you can, don't worry, if you go, I'll go, so it's okay. You can tell me to move on if you need me to. You're wearing two hats today on the panel, so you're wearing that of CEO and leader, but also father and family man. I think as a partner, it can be quite unsettling, quite frightening when the person that you love is changing right before you, and you just don't know how to help. Did you find that this was the case for you?
Yeah. No, it was very tough. I mean, we've been through a lot as a couple. We've had some incredible highs, and we've faced some real challenges. But throughout, has that got a bit of an echo on it? Right? But throughout anyway. The sort of the basis of the reason we got together in the first place has always sort of carried you through that, and we got together, one, because we were very much in love, but secondly because we thought that by being together we were additive to each other's lives, and we very much talk about the way in which, you know, you're there to support each other, but you're there to enhance those positive experiences that you have together as well. And for this period of time, gradually we just saw our relationship eroding. And the difficulty is when you have a row, most of the time you can own your own part in that row, but also you can typically understand the other person and what's driving them, and where you've got good open communication, where you understand what's happening to the other person, then what you're able to do is amend your behaviour accordingly. I mean, last night I came home, I was feeling a bit overwhelmed with work, and therefore I wasn't fully present, but I was able to say to Jane that's what I was. She was able to amend her behaviour immediately and move into supportive mode. You know, through that period, we just had no idea. And as Jane said, it happened so incrementally that it wasn't like something's changed. It just happened over a period of time. And so, you know, I started to seriously believe, one, that Jane had fallen out of love with me, but equally that sort of relationship, that relationship of equals that were going to drive each other forward. Jane was shrinking back into herself at a time in her life when I was hoping that you know, particularly as the kids got older and you were starting to think about the future together, you were thinking, well, what is this future going to be together? Because the woman that I married that was so strong was really not wanting to enjoy life, and therefore we started to believe our lives were going to do this, didn't we? Where I was off wanting to experience things and do more and more new things, and you really just wanted to hold yourself up with the dogs.
That's absolutely true.
You couldn't have a row with them, could you? You get a bit cross with them from time to time.
Thanks, Chris, and thanks for being so honest as well. And I know that personally, professionally, you've been working with Dr. Louise Newson quite a bit, and I just want to know what have been the standout moments for you from working with Dr. Louise Newson? Yeah,
I guess the most important thing, and I'm somebody I think maybe who slightly overcraves to understand why, but I do need, once I can understand why something is the case, then I can absolutely get my head around how to deal with it. And what she was able to do was just to explain what Jane had been through, and suddenly it all, as I say, it all fell into place. And then she gave us the hope, because whilst it's a fine balance, the dosage of HRT, and as we know, sometimes you get it wrong. God, there's this stuff progesterone, and when Jane has too much of that, that's a fairly frightening proposition. But equally, I know that when we go skiing together, she might just put an extra bit of testosterone on as well, just to fire herself up. But as you start to understand then what it is that you're dealing with, then it does give you, a lot of hope for the future. But really, it's had an impact on me, both in terms of my relationship with Jane, But also then if I look at the three ways in which we impact through our business, both in terms of the way in which we've approached the problem at Bruntwood, the way in which then we, and particularly Jane has through the Oglesby Charitable Trust, then looked at supporting this, but then the fact that as we're sort of increasingly looking at how we can invest in businesses that are sort of solving those big challenges and where there's a strong alignment with our purpose of creating thriving cities. So we made the decision to be a founder investor in the Balance app as well. So it's had a huge impact on me, just one, to understand the scale of the problem, and then, as I say, the scale of inequity in it as well. And I'll shut up in a second because these are much more interesting. But we spent quite a lot of time before the menopause understanding the impact of our hormones on us. Testosterone for a man's a really interesting thing. After you get a surge in testosterone, then you disappear into your man cave because you feel incredibly drained and you feel pretty bad afterwards. And I sort of started to understand all of that. And the more that you understand about hormones generally, the more that you can see just quite how extreme this is. So no, it's been life-changing for us in all sorts of different ways, but as I say, biggest waste has been personally because if that foundation had been pulled out, it's such an important part of our lives, and yet you see it time and time and time again.
Thanks, Chris. Thank you. And Rebecca, we've got Newson Health and Balance. Everyone's really strong advocates for those of us experiencing perimenopause and menopause to consider lifestyle and well-being in addition to HRT, which we'll definitely come on to shortly, as these are so important, aren't they, to optimise future health, and they're also areas that can be really used by employers to really easily support colleagues in the workplace. Among many of the things that the Balance app, which is great if you go through the blogs and the recommendations that it mentions, aromatherapy, diet, CBT therapy, mindfulness and yoga. We're actually really pleased to have our wonderful customers Reset over in the corner, here with us today, which is it's a boutique inclusive studio downstairs, specialising in yoga and Pilates. And we're so grateful to Reset because in your goodie bags, they've actually given you 3 free yoga sessions to use as well. Just how important is it to receive the right support around physical health during perimenopause and menopause?
Well, it's really important because what I haven't come on to is when we lose our hormones in the menopause, it increases our health risks of future health problems. We have an increased risk after living with low estrogen of cardiovascular disease, heart attack and stroke. It increases 5-fold after the menopause in women. We have a very low risk when we have our hormones intact compared with men. It increases our risk of osteoporosis. 1 in 2 women over the age of 51 will suffer with osteoporosis. It's huge. It increases our risk of diabetes, obesity, raised cholesterol, blood pressure, and in younger women, it increases the risk of dementia. This is all what happens if you live for a long time without estrogen. So it's really important that we're aware of health risks. So number 1, being aware of the symptoms that Jane alluded to really eloquently in her story, how it can affect women from their quality of life and how they are here and now, but actually the future as well, how it increases the risk of all these diseases. So we have to be mindful. So we say sort of it's a time to take stock, if you like, when we reach the perimenopause and the menopause. Something's going on with our hormones now. I am going to be at increased risk of these diseases. What can I do about it to live the best life as I can, and as healthy and as long as I can, and as fit? There's no point living to a long, a great age and being bedbound. You know, we want to be as fit as we can for as long as we can. So HRT is the main thing, in fact, because it is replacing the hormones and correcting the hormone deficiency. Much like if someone came to me with a thyroid problem, I would give them thyroxine to correct their hormone deficiency. Well, it's no different with the menopause. It is a hormone deficiency. We've lost estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone, a really important female hormone, by the way. Same as the men, but we have 10% less, 10% the dose of a man. So it's being aware of that, actually, and then managing it as you would wish. So replacing the hormones is the most effective way to resolve all symptoms, but you have to get the right dose and the right type. It also will halve your risk of heart disease if we start it within 10 years of your last period or under the age of 60. It will reduce your risk of osteoporosis and help prevent osteoporosis. It will reduce your risk of diabetes and obesity. And all causes of death are actually a little lower with women who take HRT compared with women who don't take HRT. So really important messages that women need to be aware of when they're making their decisions about how they might manage their menopause. So that we'll come back to HRT later on, but I think your question was more about lifestyle changes, which are equally as are also very important. But the problem is if your hormones aren't balanced or replaced back to the normal level, it is very difficult to embrace all the lifestyle changes for some women. Yes, women and men often know that they need to exercise, 20 minutes 5 times a week. But try telling some women who can't get out of bed because their fatigue is so bad, their muscles are aching, they have no motivation. They literally is dragging their body up a flight of stairs, let alone going to the gym. So, that this is a sort of utopia, really. If people are feeling well, then yes, we need to exercise regularly. Weight-bearing exercise, really important for our bone density too. Eating healthily, relaxation techniques for the anxiety is incredibly important. I think yoga breathing, some women and practicing yoga can be very helpful for some people. But all these sort of things, exercise, eating healthily, stopping smoking, reducing alcohol intake are all really important. And I think the workplace can provide that with exercise classes and building that into the working day, really. Here we have a lovely place to eat, and eating healthily with foods, educating people. I think that's how I would support people in their general lifestyle as well.
Brilliant. Thanks, Rebecca. And we've mentioned HRT, so I think it's fair that we have a good conversation about HRT while we've got the experts with us. So we've touched a little bit on some of the misconceptions. So I think if you could just give us a breakdown of the benefits of HRT, you've spoken a little bit of what are the misconceptions and what are the different types of HRT that are available.
Yeah, I think you need to know why is there even a controversy, and that this was because of a study was released in 2000 that was incorrect, and it was released to the media, and I remember reading it myself when I was about in my 20s, thinking, oh, I won't have HRT. Great headlines. It increases your risk of breast cancer, increases your risk of stroke and heart disease. Well, actually, it was wrong. They applied the wrong statistics to the study. They've gone back and applied the correct statistics just 2 years later, but it didn't reach our consciousness that actually HRT, if women take estrogen-only HRT, and these are for women who've had a hysterectomy, they don't need the hormone progesterone, actually reduces your risk of breast cancer. And these women have been followed up for 18 years. We know that HRT halves your risk of heart disease when followed up for 18 years, reduces your risk of osteoporosis. So this is why it's in our psyche somehow. It was misinformation that was fed to the media and the medical media, and it has been corrected, and so some people are aware of it, but the general public haven't caught up with that. And it's very difficult to change ingrained attitudes because it's being passed down from generation to generation almost. Don't take that, you'll get breast cancer. Completely wrong, and it's outrageous that women are not being told the truth. The Balance app obviously does, and you can read all about it, the evidence there. So really, HRT is very safe. Combined HRT, the increased risk of breast cancer is incredibly small, less than drinking 2 units of alcohol every night. And for that, you will resolve symptoms, get people sleeping well, anxiety under control, halve the risk of heart disease, and all those other diseases we discussed earlier. The type of HRT is also important. So we always advocate regulated body identical HRT, which is an absolute mirror image of the own hormones we have in our ovaries. So it's replacing, and that's all it is topping up your own hormones, replacing with exactly the same hormones back to the normal female level. And we give estrogen through the skin, so there's no increased risk of blood clots. So people with migraines, people who are overweight, people who have liver problems can take this safely. And we rub that as a gel or a patch. The progesterone, again, is body identical and often given as a tablet or the Mirena coil. And we also give testosterone replacement because that can really help not only libido, but memory, concentration, fatigue, motivation. And that's really, can be really very important for many women. And very, very safe. In fact, we have to think, what are the risks of not taking HRT? Now, certain people, people who've had estrogen receptor positive breast cancer, then it is not advised that this is a first-line treatment. But for the rest of the population, it's a very safe treatment and preventive, better than a statin, actually, in cardiovascular prevention. So really important that women are aware of all this.
Thanks so much, Rebecca. And Jane, you mentioned earlier about your relationship with HRT. You talked about that, like that medal, that award. I've literally just been through it myself. I've had my prescription for HRT there for 3 weeks. I ordered it this week. It's coming this week, so I gave myself a little pat on the back. But just how much did it impact your life? How much, you touched on it earlier, but is there anything you wanted to add as to?
I know that there is a difficulty finding a medical professional who is prepared to sit and discuss, actually, how you feel on your HRT. I'm very fortunate that I see the doctors at the Newson Clinic, but I've now become the go-to person in my life for all things menopause, and I'm not qualified to do that, just by the way. But what I hear repeatedly is women going to the medical professional in their practice and being told the same misinformation that the newspapers plastered around 20 years ago. And I can't quite get out of my head this fear. I've got to be honest with you. Every time I see Louise, she says, "How are you feeling?" I say, "Well, not sleeping very well." She's like, "Have you reduced your dose again?" I'm like, "Yeah, well, yeah, just a little bit." And the last time, 3 months ago, she got Chris on the video call and said, "Right, she's not reducing her HRT again until she's seen me in 3 months. She's agreed to this. Please, let's just see how she gets on." And I actually had that follow-up appointment yesterday. And she said, "How do you feel?" I said, "I feel fantastic. I'm sleeping. I'm achieving stuff. I've got energy." And we had a conversation just now. This deep-rooted fear of HRT. And of course, there are people for whom a real specialist HRT prescriber needs to be involved. Yeah. This estrogen receptor positive breast cancer. But for almost every other woman on the planet, it is safer to stay on estrogen than to go with the decline. So, but that message isn't out there, and I totally understand why women are frightened of that, because for some inexplicable reason, I carry that little nagging doubt. What I've now said to myself and promised to Chris is that at the moment, I'm the person I want to be. I'm doing all the things I want to do, and I'm reducing my heart disease. We have a very strong family history of dementia. I'm reducing the risks of that being the thing that gets me. So I think there's a really important narrative about the safety effects of HRT. I think we need to stop focusing on the risks, because with the right dose of the right type of HRT, completely, the risks are so tiny and the benefits are so enormous that and people say to me, "Well, why isn't that what everybody knows? Why aren't they talking about the cardiovascular risk?" I have no idea. I can't.
I'm afraid I think it's because women's health has been neglected over the years, and this information, you know, that doctors are a product of society, like we all are, and it's not just primary care, it's secondary care. The information hasn't reached them either, because women's health is not deemed important enough, and which is obviously outrageous. And Louise Newson really has changed that climate and changed the narrative. So women need to know the facts, the clear facts, the evidence-based facts, and then make their decision. They don't need to be forced to be on HRT, but if they know the logic and the understanding, then they make their own decisions. And I don't know, it's very difficult when something is entrenched in a mind. In face of contrary evidence, it can stay there. Like you know, your logic knows one thing, but your emotional mind is nagging you a bit, and this is the cruelty almost of menopause, because this anxiety is still a big feature, and it often centres around health anxiety, particularly about HRT, and I therefore, you know, it's a vicious cycle. A menopausal woman is anxious, and it's often a health anxiety, and prevents them getting the right treatment. So really, this is the purpose for today, really, is to inform everybody, to do the research and buy the free Balance app. It's all free, so you can it's all evidence-based, and come to your own conclusions. But, you know, for the majority of women, HRT is the best solution.
And can I just... And just to add to that, when, you know, Louise again was saying yesterday that she does a lot of work with the NHS and with the sort of policymakers about the menopause and HRT, and, you know, she was being sort of challenged quite strongly by the lady that's in charge in the government now, and she said, yeah, but the MHRA, which is the sort of medicines booklet, says that it should be the minimum dose for the minimum amount of time, and Louise said, yes, but that's out of date information. It's 12 years out of date. You haven't updated it. And she said, yes, but that's what the guidelines say. And Louise said, yes, but the guidelines also say that it should be a patient-centred consultation. So one of the we're trying very slowly. Unfortunately, it's turning a very big ship to change policy and to change what the NHS guidelines say. But if you go with the information that is made available on the website and the app, actually, and you can download the leaflets, you can take them to your healthcare professional and say, I would like a patient-centred consultation, please. And, you know, feel empowered to make that decision for yourself, but get the right information in order to make that decision.
Thanks. Completely. And you should be able to see there are some printed out examples of the health reports that you can, so when you're on the Balance app, you can keep track of all of your symptoms. You can print off your own health report and you can take that to the GP to do exactly what Jane's saying. So hopefully that's woken everyone up. Anyone now sitting in the room thinking, oh, workplaces are fine, they shouldn't get involved in these types of conversations. So Chris, I want to come to you next, if that's okay. So as a business owner, you completely understand about the productivity issues that the menopause causes. And at Bruntwood, we've been thankfully talking an awful lot about perimenopause and menopause support for our colleagues. I want to talk a little bit about what it is that you've been doing in Bruntwood. I can kind of pitch in with that as well, but if you could really kind of explain and come from your opinion on the why are we doing that?
Yeah, just before I do, I'll just address that last conversation, because I've been married to a scientist for 30 years, and so as a business person, you see something that you know is right, and so you say it's right, and then Jane says, well, how do you know it's right? Well, I just know it's right. And unfortunately, the medical profession generally struggles with this, don't they, in that if there's a chance of something being wrong, they'd rather not be right, in other words, not be right than be wrong. However, I think at the same time, we've always said that if this was a problem that was being suffered by heterosexual males, that would have dealt with it by now. Yeah. So there's definitely something, given the scale of the problem as well, that goes, but it is that fear of the scientific profession, although the whole idea of patient-centric or personalised medicine, I think we're going through that as a whole population, which hopefully will help. Anyway, back to the question it is interesting being married to a scientist, though, when you're a business person and you can sort of see things are right, although every now and then I am wrong, but makes for interesting discussions. So, but coming back to this as a business, so clearly when you are... So when I joined Bruntwood, we were a small business back in '91. We employed 12 people. Typically, we've had a younger working population. For some time, we've fully appreciated that what we need to do as a business is to fully unlock the potential of the females that work for us. There's just no question that you're missing a massive opportunity, and the concept of diversity before it became D&I was definitely something that we had embraced. And so we'd been through the challenge initially of how do you deal with women, typically in a younger workforce, that are having babies, and how do you ensure that they're able to continue to ensure that their careers progress. We haven't got that perfectly right, but we put an awful lot of time and conversations gone into that over the last 20 years. And then just as you start to see, right, okay, so you can get over that hump, and then almost the sort of mentally you're thinking, so as the kids leave, you're going to have this incredible sort of addition of energy into the workplace. And then you understand that actually what's going to happen is they're just going to get chopped away at the knees. So what we've done is really sort of got hold of this now, and we do have now an increasing senior leadership team, have increasing right through the business, an ageing female population that we absolutely want to be able to maximise their contributions. So we've got to deal with that within the business. But in addition to that, I mean, part of the reason that businesses want to embrace the diversity of thought that comes from women is the fact that the whole world is, women are becoming a much more powerful consumer, whether that be as a retail consumer, but just about in everything. So I was in a meeting the other day talking about the design of one of our workplaces, and we lost out on a customer because the space felt too masculine. I don't think this space does. I think this space, and interestingly, but the design and the development of this building was done by two females. And so therefore it is something that, but I think it also appeals to everyone. So we really have got to, as I say, think this through completely. So the first thing we did at Bruntwood was, first of all, sort of try to deal with it as taboo, and to get people talking about it and aware about it, and then to link women together so that they were able to speak about their shared experiences, then to link those communities with experts in order that they then get access to that too, and then to provide the Balance Plus service, which Gail will probably talk a little bit more about, to all of our female colleagues, in order that then they're best placed to be able to deal with it. But this is a conversation that isn't just about the female colleagues. The male colleagues in the business have got to understand that this is something that those female colleagues are going through, because that's the I piece of the D&I, the inclusion, and then just ensuring that we're creating an environment that works. And then finally, just going back to that, designing our spaces, which is as important to us as an employer as it is to positioning our business to our customers, to other businesses that are going through this. So it is really important that we're designing space where you're able to deal with all of those other things, the healthy nutrition, you're having a good food proposition, that you've got the health and the well-being built into the space as well, because as a provider of office space, there has been a challenge post-COVID of whether people want to use offices again, and what we've got to do is to make sure that the office environment supports people in effectively leading the most productive and healthy life. And at the moment there is a discussion about coming back into the office, and I think we've all appreciated the additional flexibility that we've had. But on the negative side, if you are suffering with the menopause, if you are suffering with a level of anxiety, actually you shrink back into yourself by not going into your office, and actually you end up in a downward spiral. So the more that we can create environments which actually are friendly to women that are going through this, and that actually help them with their journey, as opposed to almost forcing them to create an environment that doesn't support it, and therefore means that they sit at home in this downward spiral, the better.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks very much. I want to come on to Gail. I want to talk about balance, because I'm a huge advocate for balance. But the stats of users are incredible. So we've got 7 in 10 users say their mental health has improved since using balance. Over half of balance users say their physical health has improved since using the app. Just how is the balance app changing lives? Talk to us about it. What are some of those success stories?
Yeah, I think we are very, very proud of what we're the way we're helping kind of our users. We were talking about the health report earlier on. I mean, 250,000 women have downloaded this health report, went to see their GPs, armed with that evidence, their symptoms, tick all of the symptoms, so that the GP can get a very easy way to diagnose, right? We said, I mean, 7% of women, it takes more than 10 appointments to get a diagnosis, right? It can take 12% of women more than 5 years to get access to treatment. With this health report, a 10-minute consultation means the GP can see everything, at a glance, and then you can spend the rest of the 10 minutes appointment to think about solution, treatment, etc. So we're really supporting women get fast access to treatment. 87% of our users have access to a diagnosis. 72% got access to treatment. Sadly, although we've talked about all the great benefits of HRT, only 12% of women in the UK at the moment have access to HRT, while 72% of women using balance have managed to get access to the appropriate treatment for themselves. So we're hugely kind of proud about those different stats. But to come back to the workplace as well, it's very important that as well women feel comfortable to talk about their menopause at work, and because they've been empowered with the knowledge, because in the community they've spoken with other women having the same symptom, and then they know they're not having early onset dementia or they're not going mad. They're really understanding what's happening with their body. They feel comfortable. 74% of women have told us, I feel comfortable talking about the menopause at work. So of course it's the beginning of finding a solution, of breaking up the taboo, as Chris said earlier on. 44% said they feel less inclined to reduce their hour or leave the workplace. Gosh, amazing, we're keeping those women. Finally, they're staying in work. They're going for promotion. 28% of them saying, I feel more empowered now to go for a promotion. Wow, that makes me very, very happy. And it's not because it's because they've been empowered, right, with the right knowledge, because they've been told the truth, and because they feel empowered to make the right decisions for themselves. We've got a community, as I said. We've got a tracker for your symptoms. We've got a period tracker. We've got a community where you can speak to like-minded women. We've got as well a number of set exercises, so you can try, to reduce the sugar and talk about all those lovely things we talked about holistically about your health. And again, the app will remind you, how are you getting on today? So again, with some friends, you can just really start to make different decisions for yourselves. We also have a treatment kind of review where you can see what different treatments are working for other women. So again, when you go to see your healthcare professional, you can make an informed decision. Say, oh, I've read about this transdermal HRT. There's a patch, there's a gel. I've read about this. What do you think, doctor? And then it's a much more interesting conversation that you have with your healthcare professional. And we've got many other things on the app. Of course, the content. The content, again, and I think this is the only one of its kind. We've been contacted by many, many women all around the world who beg us to translate this content because they're like their mothers, their cousins, their colleagues in Spain, in Brazil, in Japan, to have access to this content. They say, please help us translate it, because it's the only app of its kind where actually it's written in really simple terms. that it's written for women. It's not written in an academic paper, you know, with a lot of science behind it. It's just we understand this space really well. At the clinic where Rebecca and Louise work, we are seeing more than 4,000 women every single month. This is the largest clinic in the world. So we know what they want, what you guys want to hear. We know how you're struggling to get diagnosis, access to treatment. We know what topics are important to you. We know that some of you are struggling with long COVID, and how does that impact? How does your HRT impact with your long COVID symptoms? So we understand all of that. So we're bringing articles day in, day out, so that the information, evidence-based information, is there, available for everyone in the world.
Thanks, Gail. And I'm conscious that we've probably got some Q&As, so I'm going to wrap up with the big question of the day. So kind of, for everyone on the panel, but more towards Gail and for Rebecca as well, is what are the recommendations for businesses and leaders who are wanting to offer more support to colleagues in the workplace? And Gail, how can Balance help businesses looking to add more support for colleagues who are affected by the menopause? We want to talk about Balance Plus.
Yeah, thank you. So we've got a framework, and we're working with lots of large organizations. We're of course working with Bruntwood, who's been an absolute pioneer into the space. And I think we have also lots of free resources on the balance-menopause.com website, where companies are coming in. We have a free menopause guidance for you business leaders who haven't really started on your journey. Please go to the website. There's lots of free resources. Instead of, again, developing your own menopause guidance, we've put one. It's been looked at by lawyers, so please copy-paste. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. We were saying earlier on, Jane, how sometimes it can be frustrating for us to work with the government, to work with the NHS, because the pace is so slow. But we know that with you guys in corporates, fast change is possible. And we've seen it happening right here, right now. So, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. Let's share between different businesses and make change happen. So that's the first thing, creating a guidance so that your employees knows what are you offering in the company, what are the resources available, etc., where to find the information. First thing. Second thing, doing what exactly we're doing now. Talking about it and breaking the taboo. So bringing doctors such as like Rebecca, bringing menopause champions, find women in your organization who are willing to talk about their story. What a lovely thing to have people at the very top of the organization, or not, anywhere in the organization, in fact, talk about their own experience, because if they can talk about it, surely you can too. So we also can help you kind of organize talks so that it's okay to talk about the menopause in the workplace, and suddenly employees will start to talk between themselves. The other thing is bringing capabilities. I think Chris talked about the fact it's important that, male allies as well are aware, how to have conversation. What is the impact of the menopause in the workplace? So we have created an online remote course, which is CPD accredited, available in 9 different languages for your different kind of businesses, if you have different businesses around the world. It's easy to implement, 6 different modules of 15 minutes each, covering a little bit what Rebecca has covered today. What is the menopause, the symptoms? Why is it important to have male allies? How can what's important for men to know about this? As a line manager, how do I have the conversation? We film the role play with the manager and their employees. Very important to understand, oh my God, if one of my employees is struggling, what am I going to say? And again, there's also a legal implication of the menopause. There's more and more employment tribunals that are happening because employers have not been able to support their employees, right? And they're losing cases. So it's important for HR teams, legal teams to understand what could be the repercussions so they know where they stand in terms of discrimination. Because yes, under the Inequality Act 2010, the menopause is covered under sex discrimination, age discrimination, and disability discrimination, so beware. So we're covering all of this in our course to bring capability across the whole organization. Very important, everyone knows a little bit about the menopause. And finally, empower your employees with the tools so that they can have the right information, have access to treatment, diagnosis, and have a holistic view of menopause. And we are talking about Balance Plus, which again, Bruntwood will be our first customer, so we're very, very pleased that we're going to pilot that and make it available very, very soon. And Balance Plus is the world's first health and well-being companion dedicated to menopausal and perimenopausal women. So we talked about nutrition, we talked about yoga, we talked about Pilates, we talked about weight management, we talked about mental health, sleep, impact of menopause on your skin, your hair. Well, we're bringing all of this into Balance Plus. We have classes, we've got recipe videos, we have talks by experts. Louise, Newson, and Rebecca and guests have a live Q&A every single month on a different menopausal topic. What else do we have? We have live consultations as well, so you can see what's happening behind the closed doors of a menopause consultation, and then you don't feel so scared yourself going and finding some treatment. And finally, last but not least, we've got a happiness moment, so that every morning your employees come to work, feeling great and bringing, their best self. So this is available for employees, and absolutely employers can purchase that as part of their well-being kind of program, and we'll give you codes so that your employees can seamlessly access both parts of the Balance app. So don't be shy. Come and see me at the end if there's anything that we've talked about that is of interest to you. And I'll just conclude, actually, whilst I have the mic. If you think your company is not doing enough, then you might be the change you've been waiting for, right? So wherever you sit in the company, it doesn't matter if you're health, HR or not, wherever you sit in the company, if you want to make change happen, and we have the luxury to work with lots of menopause champions who have different roles in the company and just do that because they believe change needs to happen. So they come to see us. We come with strategies, how to convince, their organization to make change happen, and we help them. So come and talk to us, and let's get women, back at the forefront, and so they can fulfill their careers.
Thanks, Gail. I think that's an absolutely perfect place. If anyone's got any other bits to add at all, or we can go to a Q&A. So I'm just looking around the room. Is there anybody who has any questions that they would like to add? Oh, lovely. I'll let Eugenia.
Yeah, I've got polycystic ovary syndrome. So from the age of 11, when my period started, I had very, very heavy, long, protracted periods with huge gaps in between. I got to about the age of 45 and I'd been on the contraceptive pill to control the periods. When I came off, went straight to clockwork. They're every month, they're short, they're light. And I'm at the point now I'm thinking, this is how it should have always been. I don't actually want that now to change unless that's it. They're gone. And my question is really to do with HRT, because obviously the concerns with breast cancer are still at the back of my mind, but the thing that would be putting me off is what I don't want is to take the HRT and then for the period to sort of go out of sync again. And I'm just wondering, partly, how am I going to experience the menopause in the same way, given my condition? And is HRT going to have an impact on the period and actually make them worse again?
Shall I take that? Yes, I mean, it's a good question, and thank you for raising that. But yes, we have a lot of patients with PCOS, and menopause affects them the same way as anyone else. Periods have changed, and actually we give HRT that regulates one's periods. So it can be very controlled. So a woman, when they're still having periods, gives a type of HRT called sequential HRT, which means that she will continue to have regular periods, and we can manipulate that by how we time the progesterone part of the HRT. When women get a bit older, by the age of 54 or after a few years of being on sequential HRT, then we can change it in agreement with the woman to a continuous regime, which means no periods. going forward. So HRT will fit the individual depending on their cycle. And often women have got heavy periods, and I find by balancing the hormones, the periods become much more acceptable and lighter and regular and predictable.
Well, that's the thing at the moment, because I've had so many years of them being very heavy and absolutely horrendous. I've now got to a point where actually they're light and manageable and I can live with them. I'm actually feeling a lot better about it now.
Well, I think HRT will only help them. And actually, if people start HRT, you can always change your mind, you can always stop it, and it won't have harmed anyone, you know. But it's totally controllable from the you know, regimes we can use.
So does it affect when your periods actually stop?
So if you have a sequential regime, we force a period to come,
right,
because at the end of the progesterone you'll have a withdrawal bleed. So that with time, as a woman gets older and the ovarian function diminishes further, then they may find that they're not bleeding, or the bleeding gets so light that actually we can convert to a bleed-free preparation. Right. So we tailor it to the individual always. We wouldn't accept having uncomfortable or heavy periods. We'd do something about that, and it's all perfectly treatable.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks so much for your question. There is another. Yep.
Hi, my name's Gemma. I work for a charity called Maggie's, which both Chris and Jane have been very kindly involved in. It's a cancer support charity, and we're currently rolling out a menopause support programme for the huge amount of women who have had menopause induced by their cancer treatment, and also for those women who are going through treatment and would have been going through the menopause in the background. And I think what I kind of find really frustrating is that all of these women come to Maggie's and they're having the menopause because of their treatment, or it's going to have a really big impact on them at the same time as they're having treatment. And nobody is having the conversation with them within their medical consultations and their support about how they can get support, how this is going to affect and impact them. Obviously, we're doing something about that at Maggie's, but you know, how confident are you that there'll be a near future where the cancer world, the broader medical world is kind of fitting the menopause in with all the other work that we're doing around women's health?
Well, absolutely right, and it's a real passion of mine. I've done a lot of work with Trustee, who are a cancer charity for younger women. It is not raised with our oncologists that this medication or chemotherapy is going to put them into menopause quite often, where it might be raised in a sentence. It is not enough. We're campaigning that actually every oncology clinic should have access to a menopause specialist next door, so that it's a one-stop package, if you like, because many treatments will cause ovarian failure. And this needs to be addressed with women, because there's huge health risks from that itself, putting the cancer to one side from a young woman particularly. And we've written a booklet about this. We've got 2 booklets on the Balance app, aren't they, about cancer sufferers that we're getting into.
Those booklets have been really, really useful, and we use them at Maggie's.
And we're trying to campaign with, we're talking, lecturing oncologists. I've just done 2 lectures with the breast oncologists and general gynae oncologists, and there's beginning to have some change. It's not fast enough, it's not quick enough, but there is some change going on. And Louise is a pioneer, and I support her in her work, and we are doing a lot of work to make those changes. But unfortunately, the NHS is a slow machine, but you're absolutely right. Everything you say is correct. And please look at those leaflets. Anyone else who's been affected by this, they're really I hope really useful leaflets on people who've had breast cancer or any cancer at all and had treatments, and help their understanding.
Thanks so much for your question. I think we've got one at the back in the corner, Eugenia. Just over that way.
Hi, is it true that you can't start on the menopause or the perimenopause if you're still taking the contraceptive pill?
So you'd usually you'd stop the contraceptive pill, and you can still have symptoms of the menopause on the contraceptive pill, because it's not a brilliant estrogen. It's very good for contraception, but it's not so good for controlling menopausal symptoms. So download the Balance app, fill in the symptoms score, and if anyone's experiencing symptoms on the pill, really the most effective treatment is HRT rather than the combined pill. The type of HRT we use with estrogen through the skin, we can change and titrate the dose according to the individual. There's not one dose. This is a really important concept. It's not one dose for everybody. There's your tablet. That's the end of that. Say young people under the, in their 40s or 30s often need much higher doses of HRT because the metabolism is different from a 60-year-old. So the lovely thing is with estrogen through the skin as a patch or gel, we can flex that dose until someone is asymptomatic. And, well, the contraceptive pill is just one dose, as you know. So we generally stop the contraceptive pill if a woman's still having periods, but having menopausal symptoms, so they're perimenopausal, they can still get pregnant. So it's important that they think about contraception as well as HRT, because HRT is not a contraceptive. And one way is to have the Mirena coil. Not everyone wants that, but it is a very, very good neat way of protecting the womb with progesterone, because estrogen on its own could cause irregular bleeding if women have a uterus, and it's not terribly good for that at all. It causes thickening of the linings, but to prevent it you need a progesterone, and you could have that in the form of the Mirena coil, which would protect the womb, so you can have estrogen added on, and it would also give you contraception. So that's a really good solution for younger people who are still menstruating.
Great, thank you. Eugenia, we've got one at the top. We'll come to you.
You're making me work for it.
Thanks. Hello. So I guess my question really is, what can women say so that GPs take them seriously when they get fobbed off? Because you mentioned earlier you can take over 5 appointments. And, well, my background, my name is Mark Martin. I'm a hospital doctor. In the last 2 years I've been a GP trainee, and only recently it's been a big part of the training, because we recognize it's underdiagnosed, underprescribed, and most women are given antidepressants instead of HRT. And I do a lot of health assessments at gyms as well, and quite often that's where I come across the most frustrated women here, and they've been to the GP a lot of times. I refer them back. They have blood tests that come back normal. They aren't over the age of 50, so they get told you're not having menopause because you're still having periods. So there's a lot of misinformation coming from GPs as well. What do women say for the GPs to take them serious about HRT?
Can I take it? Spot on, and I'm delighted to see that actually menopause is being offered now as a training. There's lots of training, so it's great for us to hear that. So I think I think one of the reasons why women can't get a diagnosis very easily is because sometimes they would come with a couple of symptoms, or just even one symptom that's really the worst one, and they'll put other symptoms. Actually, as Jane said, she put the anxiety onto something else because my life is so difficult. And also, I don't know about you, but my doctor always say, one symptom per appointment. That's probably the worst thing, that you can say to a menopausal woman, because there's more than 40 different symptoms. So how are the doctors supposed to diagnose something that's got so many symptoms if you just say one part of the story? So back to the app, and it looks like I'm a very big salesperson, but the app is free. So anyway, so go on to the app, because we have actually a menopause questionnaire, and if you fill in this questionnaire, then actually it makes you really think. Actually, do I have ache in my joints? Oh yeah, I do have a bit of ache in my joint. Anxiety, yes, a little bit of that, and it really makes you reflect on the things that you might have put onto something else. Oh, I have dry skin. Yeah, but I wouldn't have gone to the doctor and told him about my dry skin. Just put a bit of cream on it. But if you go to the healthcare professional with a complete picture, suddenly this is where the doctor will say, aha, all of this combined actually make up the diagnosis. All of this combined, make the GP realize that actually, the estrogen receptor in your body are not getting what they need, hence creating all of this. So I would advise, and actually lots of GPs, surgeries are already using the Balance app as part of their treatment pathway. The Ministry of Defense as well, medical services are using it as part of their treatment pathway. So I would encourage the NHS to also use it as part of their treatment pathway. So when a woman calls actually about possibly menopausal symptom, actually as woman, download the Balance app, fill in your health report before your appointment, then come armed with your health report so we can discuss it together. I think this will be a good way that the doctor actually have a chance to see the total picture. Does that help?
Please do, Jamie.
Can I just say, add a little bit there? As a GP, you're limited in time. It's a very difficult job. They're under enormous pressure. So if you get the conversation started off on the right track to start with by downloading that and coming with, look, I think this could be my hormones. My periods have changed slightly, and I've got all these symptoms. What do you think? Immediately, you're going to be in a better position because we're going to be talking hormones, thinking about treatment straight off, than if you do one symptom, you're down a bit of a red herring here and there, because that's the problem. Blood tests are not very helpful, and they're not advised over the age of 45, because when the ovary starts to fail, our estrogen levels are up and down. It produces quite high levels for a day, and then the next day it's dropped. So the blood tests can be done but in the younger woman, but they're often inaccurate. So the diagnosis is clinical, meaning symptoms, and the patient's story.
Thank you so much.
Can I just add the other, thank you so much. And people like you can spread the word, that's the other thing. And Louise and Rebecca have developed, they have a not-for-profit organisation, Newson Health Research and Education, which has given a free, will you better tell him the story?
It's called Confidence in Menopause. Yeah, I've used that under 14. Yes, that's right, yeah, good. But, that will help understanding for all healthcare professionals. Yeah.
I know Chris needs to duck out now. You're all going to be hanging around for a few minutes, aren't you? Yeah. I'm so sorry we can't continue in this room with the questions, but our panel are definitely going to be hanging around. So please, if you've got any questions for us, come and see us. I just want to say a really huge thank you to everybody for coming out today. I know it's a big ask to give this time up during the day when you're in the office. We hope it was really useful. We hope you've been inspired to be those champions to go back to talk to your workplace. We have dotted posters around which have the QR code that takes you straight to download the Balance app. The recording of the event is going to be available as well. We'll send that out to everybody that's attended today, unless you want to tell us otherwise. And if you've got any other questions or you want to talk any further about what we're doing in Bruntwood for our colleagues, then please come and come give. Please join me in giving a huge thank you to our panel today. Thank you so much. Thank you. And we'll wish you a really brilliant rest of the day. Thanks so much, everybody. Enjoy your day.
In part of my GP training, we get a really small amount of menopause training, and I see a lot of people in practice and part of my health assessments in gyms that are really frustrated about their symptoms and maybe not knowing how to go about the diagnosis. So essentially just to upskill myself to get a bit more information so I can recognize people who are having symptoms and where to signpost them for help. A lot of it is to do with awareness, because there's been a big push in the background from our royal colleges that menopause is underdiagnosed. We're not picking up on the symptoms. Women are leading quite debilitating lives because they're not getting diagnosed properly, or they're getting misdiagnosed and started on antidepressants. And it's just educating myself, raising the awareness in myself and my colleagues as well. So we recognize the symptoms early and start the treatment in appropriate and good timing.
Right, and what's the biggest thing you've learned today?
A lot about, I think, the myths, trying to overcome the myths and why women perhaps don't present and be really open about their gender, about they're thinking they're perimenopausal, and again the appropriate prescription is kind of dispelling the risk of breast cancer and stuff, and the fact that they're still having a period, so they're not menopausal or perimenopausal, they're too young. And I learned a lot about that already, so I'm already going to be thinking a bit more about that when I see younger females. So that's definitely going to change my practice.
Oh, I thought it was absolutely fantastic. Before I came to the event, I thought I knew everything about menopause. and I didn't. I thought perimenopause was just maybe a couple of headaches or anything, and I've learned that it actually can probably in some cases be worse than the actual menopause, so that's a very real thing. I've also just started on a statin, so the information about maybe going on HRT instead of a statin being better is really valuable.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. So is there kind of stuff you didn't know about before? Like, what's the biggest thing that you've learned today?
Probably about the about people being prescribed statins for high cholesterol. I didn't know that menopause could make your cholesterol higher, and I didn't know that the anxiety was also something that you'd go to the doctor and only be able to say one thing, and it would be anxiety, so they might prescribe you antidepressants, but actually that's not the full story. So it's complex and it's very individual, so my menopause wouldn't be the same as anyone else's.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you feel empowered now to be able to have those conversations at work about the effects that it's having on you and what it might be having on your younger team members as well?
I think so, yeah. I think there was a time when people couldn't talk about mental health, and that conversation now is open, you know, with well-being, mental health. So I think there will be a time when you can start talking about menopause in the same way, and it's no big deal.
Brilliant, brilliant. And in terms of the app, do you think you're going to use it? Do you think it'd be helpful for you?
I'm going to be downloading it when I get back to work, yeah, and I will. I think it'll be a really good tool to tick the boxes for various symptoms, and then I know that you can download it and actually take that with you to the GP, which will be really useful.
Brilliant, great, thank you.
And I've got a goodie bag.
And you've got a goodie bag.
Really interesting. It's not something that I was aware of. Well, I was aware of menopause, like as a word, and something that happens to people, but wasn't aware of the size of the problem and the impact that it has on individuals. So yeah, really interesting, really nice to see. Say nice to see, that's probably not the right word, but it's good to see that someone's doing something about it, and it seems to me like it's an educational thing for everyone, not just men.
Yeah, yeah.
It's an educational thing for, I think a lot of women perhaps don't know about how to deal with that as well in the workplace. So really, yeah, really eye-opening and interesting.
So thinking about the workplace, how do you think what you've learned today is going to affect you moving forward?
It's certainly another thing that I'm now aware of, that I wasn't aware of before, and as a man in the workplace, I've got that privileged position where I can be that ally to women in the workplace. I think it just gives me that little bit of knowledge to maybe help where I can if I see that.
Yeah.
I don't know how I would do that yet. I mean, there's a lot to learn. I mean, you know, an hour's presentation and chat around that isn't enough to know everything, but I think it gives you that awareness, and I think that's important, is that awareness.